I have a couple more songs on there that I think, people that are going through a struggle like what I've gone through will hopefully, gain a new best friend, like a soundtrack to guide them through the heartbreak, because it's really a lonely and scary process when you're trying to have a baby.
That was Nelly Joy, and she is so much cooler than me that you won't even believe it. Nelly is a singer-songwriter. She has several tracks on Spotify and other streaming platforms, and yes, I do recommend you go check her out. Like 1 in 6, Nelly has experienced infertility. Today, she's going to share that experience with us, how endometriosis has impacted her life and her fertility, and how she started turning her frustrations into art with new music, including her single, Baby Showers. And here's a clip. I mentioned you can find her on Spotify and other streaming platforms, including YouTube. Go check her out. I'm Dan Bulger with Progyny, and this is Infertility. Hello and welcome. As I mentioned at the top, today we're going to get to know Nelly Joy.
I am a singer-songwriter that is so honored to be here today. I'm going to be talking about my journey with fertility and trying to have a baby, which has led me to write my story into songs. And I have a single out right now called Baby Showers that, really just touches on the feelings that women and men both experience when they're trying to have a baby unsuccessfully. I hope that when people listen to the song, they feel a little bit less alone if they are going through what we're going through. So that's why I wrote it, and I'm excited to share that with you today.
We've spoken about baby showers on this show a few times. It's no secret that anyone struggling to have a baby on their own can have some complicated emotions when it comes to their friends and loved ones celebrating pregnancy. And perhaps one of the more difficult milestones for those struggling is attending a baby shower. And this song does a great job capturing that. Music is obviously a huge part of Nelly's life, but I was surprised to learn that she actually came to it a bit later than you might expect.
I fell into music. That's what I tell people, because I was always a sports girl growing up. And actually, it was when I was 17 years old, I was pole vaulting. I know, weird. And I flew over the mats and I broke my left wrist and I needed surgery. So I kind of stopped sports for a moment, needed to recover. And it was at that point in time that I picked up the guitar once my wrist was starting to heal. So they would make me kind of move it like this. Feels like a really creative way of like me moving my wrist was playing guitar. And my brother had always written songs. And I thought that was so cool. So the minute I had 4 chords in me, I was writing my emotions, which helped me because I was this, typical troubled teenager that had a hard time expressing the deeper emotions I was experiencing. And songwriting gave me a really safe and beautiful place to tell my stories. And then I moved to Nashville later, get a record deal. Next thing you know, I'm out on tour with, Jason Aldean, Brad Paisley, Blake Shelton. And so then it becomes my job, which is amazing and a beautiful gift. But also with that comes a lot of stress. And so I've been really lucky to have been in a couple cool bands. The Jane Deere Girls was my first band. And then the last one I was in, my husband and I, it was called Gone West, and it was with Colby Calais and Justin Young. And we got to do so many cool things. Toured the United States, played the Today Show, opened for George Strait. And I don't know. So music has been such a blessing in my life. But after Gone West kind of stopped, and the pandemic hit, and we're all just sitting still. For me, this was a moment of just kind of going, okay, what really matters in life? What do I really want at the end of all this? And I thought, well, I want a baby. And so that's when we started trying. Like, we were never careful before that. But that's when we got more like calculated more strategic about trying, and then realizing, okay, this isn't going to happen easily, which I wasn't surprised by, because I had endometriosis for, I don't even know how many years. So while I was out on the road touring with all of these amazing musicians, I was extremely sick for a lot of it. I had kidney problems. I became anemic, and I blacked out one time on the tour bus before a show. IBS was a terrible battle that would kind of come and go with endometriosis. And anyway, long story short, I've had several surgeries. I'm doing much better with endo now.
Nelly found that acupuncture actually helped her with her endometriosis symptoms a lot. So that might be something to talk to your doctor about if you're experiencing any of those symptoms.
My body was starting to work. So at least I'm getting my health back along the way. I kind of think that no matter what happens, that's the most important thing, right? And then the next thing I would say is that going back to how I got into music, it started from a therapeutic, honest, I need music to get me through what I'm going through in life. And then it became my job. Well, now I'm back to square one. I'm writing these songs from a place of I have to write these stories because it's too painful to keep inside. I never really thought I would share the stories because I hadn't been public about my journey with infertility. Um, but as I've gotten further along with the album, I just feel like if Baby Showers or God is a Woman or I Miss You Still, if any of those songs help one person feel less alone on their journey to trying to conceive, then it's totally worth it for me.
Endometriosis can be extremely challenging. It's not only a potential cause of infertility, but it can also be quite painful. And making matters worse, many women who experience endometriosis have a difficult time finding the right care.
At first, I thought it was unique and I was the only person that had experienced being ignored or kind of laughed at. But come to find out, many women that get diagnosed with endometriosis, most of them go 7, sometimes 10 years before they actually get diagnosed and get help, have surgery, or find some kind of path to healing. And for me, I'm very in tune with my body. So I had done a lot of research on the symptoms I was experiencing, which for me was like every other month when my cycle would start. The pain was so bad that I would literally be on the floor. My legs would go numb. I would be vomiting, and we'd end up in the ER, and they'd be like, "You have appendicitis," every time. You have appendicitis, and then they go and they're like, "Actually, no, you have a hemorrhagic cyst." And I'm like, "Okay, this is becoming a consistent pattern." And although they can't diagnose endometriosis from like an ultrasound sometimes, or even MRIs and CAT scans can be a little wonky in regards to 100% confirmation on whether or not you have endo. I had told a doctor a year before everything got really bad. I had said, "Hey, I think I have endometriosis. Like my symptoms are spot on." And she just basically kind of chuckled and was like, oh, "All girls have hard periods. My daughter's, it's the same way. Like, here's some birth control." Chunked it, like, and I tried control. I tried several different kinds, and all that did was make me want to jump off a bridge like a crazy person. And I'm not saying birth control can't work for other people. I know it has or can, but for me, it was not the remedy. So after that doctor completely dismissed me, I thought I was crazy. I thought, well, I went in there so confident that this was what was going on, and she dismissed me to the point of like making me feel like an idiot for even bringing it up. So I just kind of put it in my back pocket, and then over the next 2 years, as I was doing those arena tours opening for Aldine and Paisley and whatnot, kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And I mean, my kidneys, I had so many UTIs and kidney infections. At one point, I had to come off the road because the doctor was just like, "Your kidneys are, you need them to live. Like, that." So for me, the learning experience in that process was like health first. It doesn't matter if you're trying to be a rock star or you're trying to accomplish some corporate dream that you have. If you don't have your health, you literally have nothing.
So it took about a decade for Nelly to get any answers. And it was when she finally was diagnosed with endometriosis that she learned that she should expect family building to be a challenge.
He did the first surgery, and come to find out, my right ovary was actually glued to my pelvic wall. It could not work.
So with this diagnosis and history in mind, Nelly didn't wait long to seek help when she and her husband started trying to conceive.
I had always feared that it was going to be harder for me because of endometriosis. And I've never been on birth control. We've never been careful, and like there was never a pregnancy scare or anything. And we've been married 12 years, so it's kind of like, what's going on here? Something's not right. And I just had this gut feeling. So I immediately hopped to it, went to the fertility doctors, and they suggested IVF, which we did. And I will say that for anyone that hasn't done IVF and is considering it, definitely do your research because it is the most physically, emotionally, mentally taxing thing I've probably ever done. One of them, anyway. They don't always prepare you for the psychological changes that hormones are going to do to you. Also, you can't really have a job or at least a full time job when you're doing IVF because you're literally on call. Oh, your cycle starts. You need an ultrasound immediately. Oh, day 3, you need another one. Day 5, day 7. And, it's literally you're like living in the doctor's office. Pretty much that's what you begin to feel like for a few weeks until you have your egg retrieval. In our first round of IVF, we got 8 eggs and 3 fertilized, but one only made it to blastocyst. And those are normal numbers. And I didn't know that, like for a woman my age. And I wish someone had kind of prepped me a little bit more just for the fact that you can do IVF and it won't work. That can happen.
Nelly's doing my job for me. Yes, IVF is great. Success chances with IVF can be extremely high. And once you have chromosomally normal embryos, the success rates go even higher. But not every embryo transfer will lead to a baby, and not every round of IVF will even lead to an embryo. This isn't meant to discourage you, but it is important to understand these things if you're heading this direction. It will help you understand the process, and it might even give you a chance to prepare if needed.
The one embryo we did have came back genetically abnormal in 3 places, so we cannot implant her. And that's when I just like fell apart. That was the first deep, dark, just sense of loss that my husband and I had experienced.
After a disappointing first round of IVF, they tried again, but this cycle was canceled when her ovaries weren't responding to the stimulation medications.
About this is I'd been doing acupuncture, so my follicle count had gone up, my AMH had gone up. Things are looking great for me. But when we went to do IVF, halfway through, my follicles, which are just eggs, they didn't grow. Like they just literally didn't grow. So we stopped treatment halfway through, hit reset, and about 9 or 10 months later is when I got pregnant naturally. And I just remember I didn't believe it. I literally was in disbelief. I was pregnant, very pregnant, and we started monitoring my HCG numbers, and they were going up really normally, like a normal pregnancy would. So I told my husband, I'm like, here we go. And about 7 weeks in, I fell to my knees in excruciating pain, and it was mostly on one side, on the right side. The pain radiated down through my hips and my legs. 15 minutes in, by the time my friend showed up for my co-write, and they're holding me and praying for me, I'm like basically in tears and I'm starting to vomit. And I'm like, okay, this is another level of pain. And I just remember looking at them and I said, I feel like this is an ectopic pregnancy. Like I'm just so in tune again with my body. It was on one side, it's acute. I knew also that women that have struggles with endometriosis, it can be more common, a higher risk to have an ectopic pregnancy. They confirmed it was ectopic. I was, internally bleeding, and luckily my tube hadn't ruptured. And if that had happened, it would have been critical. Very, time is of the essence. Once that happens, you can basically bleed out and die. But my doctors at Vanderbilt, they worked fast, they worked hard, and Dr. Anderson, the same doctor that diagnosed me with endometriosis and basically saved my life, turned my life around for the first time in like 2013. He was there magically at the hospital that day. He knows me, he knows my story, he knows my body. He had been supporting me through my pregnancy and did my surgery and stayed until 10 p.m. I just cannot tell you how blessed and lucky and taken care of I felt. Took my tube, they took the baby, and they saved my life.
We talk about being your own advocate a lot on this show. When dealing with your health, you sometimes might need to fight for the care that you need. Our healthcare system is imperfect. It's an unfortunate reality that impacts women and women of color disproportionately. Nelly was able to get the care that she needed primarily because she took her health into her own hands, which is something that she had to learn at a young age.
The fact that when I was in my younger 20s and my pain was dismissed, you're fine, there's nothing wrong with you, go home. right? To here I am, a woman that's in my 30s, later 30s. I had grown and evolved in my story strong enough to stand up for myself, to know when pain is or isn't okay, to advocate for myself. And I'm grateful that I had that time to have that growth spurt, because who knows, if I would have been in my younger 20s and experienced pain, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't have gone and gotten help, because maybe I just would have put it in the "you're crazy, there's nothing wrong with you" box. But the truth is, being a woman shouldn't be physically painful in regards to your womanly cycle. And if it is, there's something wrong and you need to get help. And especially in pregnancy, like, it's just too risky not to go.
Losing the baby and experiencing such a traumatic and painful loss on top was incredibly difficult for the couple.
It was just utter grief. And it was the first time in 12 years that my husband and I had held each other and just, I've never cried like that. The tears were uncontrollable. And he's never even, I don't think he's, I'm gonna start crying. He's never even cried since we've been married. He's so tough. And he, yeah, it was just like, it was really, really, really sad. But at the same time, experiencing that grief together has made us so much stronger. Like, it's just added to our story and our love. I look at him and as hard as it is that we haven't had a baby yet, like, I have my partner, I have my person, and I know that I can go through anything in life with him. The hardest day of our life, the darkest moment, we got through it, and we're stronger for it.
We started this story with a song, Baby Showers, and I hope now you understand just how cathartic her music is for her.
Well, that song, it still makes me cry. And it's funny because I keep thinking, like, well, goodness gracious, Lord, when am I going to run out of tears? Like, when does the waterworks stop? At what point does my body just be like, that's it, that's all you got? There's no more grief left. But that's just not how grief works. It comes in waves, and I'm learning just to give myself permission to cry when I want to cry. And if that means I'm out at a party with friends, or I'm talking with you and I start to tear up, don't hold it in. I excuse myself and I let it run, because tears are a healing mechanism. They allow us one way to help get that grief out. And if you don't get grief out, it stays in and it'll eat you up from the inside out. And that's why I'm a musician and I make art. That's another way I get my grief out, is by putting the pen to paper, finding a melody. And even if I write a song that no one ever hears and I don't release it, that was just me processing through my emotions.
We recorded this episode in 2024, and at the time of this recording, Nelly was still on her path. And I'm happy that Nelly was willing to share her experience even without the happy ending, because frankly, the reality is that many people are out there right now on their own path without knowing how it's going to end.
Okay, it didn't work for me yet, but there's a chance we'll try again at some point and it could work. So IVF is one of those beautiful things that was invented to help couples that are struggling to get pregnant, and it works. Like, there's so many friends of mine, one of my best friends actually just had a beautiful baby via IVF, and we were actually 1 week apart when I did get pregnant. But just seeing that that's even a possibility for people that otherwise couldn't get pregnant. The only thing I would say that kind of breaks my heart about the whole thing is that insurance doesn't cover it for most people. And my husband and I are in a place where we're blessed and we can afford to try something like IVF without the help of insurance. But I really do think that it doesn't make sense to me. You, as a woman, like, you get diagnosed with something like endometriosis, which directly affects your fertility. I think endo is one of the leading causes of infertility. So it just doesn't make sense to me that at that point insurance wouldn't help the body do what it's supposed to do. Like, we were given a uterus and ovaries not for fun, but actually to procreate, to create life. And the women have that beautiful, we hold the power to carry children, which is crazy when you think about that. But some women's bodies don't work exactly right and they need additional help, like IUI or IVF. And I just think that should be included in insurance coverage. I don't understand why it's separate.
I couldn't agree more. At Progyny, we're working every day to bring these benefits to more people. When infertility isn't covered by insurance, it can be completely inaccessible to people. And those who pay out of pocket might have to make compromises that can hurt their chances of success or become risky in pregnancy. So yes, we need to increase access to fertility treatments so that everyone has a chance to reach their family building goals. And with that, I want to give a big thank you to Nelly Joy for joining us today and for sharing her story. Again, you can find her wherever you stream music or on YouTube at Nelly Joy. And I want to thank you for listening. If you want to connect with us, you can do so on Instagram at This Is Infertility Podcast. If you want to follow Progyny, you can do that at Progyny Inc. Of course, if you're listening on a podcast app, please leave a rating and review. This Is Infertility is brought to you by Progyny. Please remember, this podcast is not intended to substitute for the personalized expert advice of your physician. I'm Dan Bulger, and this is Infertility.